Change your script. Instead of thinking, I'm an older guy who's going to hear me, think I have 45 years of helpful experience to share. Change our script, reframe it into something more positive and more encouraging.
This is the Authority Builder Podcast. This is the place to come if you're building a professional practice and you want to be seen as the leader in your market. We're going to interview the top experts throughout professional services, and we're going to share insights with you to help you grow your firm and be positioned as the only choice that clients ever want. Welcome to the Authority Builder Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Gordon, and we've got an amazing interview for you today. This is another in our series for attorneys, and today I am talking with Gary Miles. He's been practicing law for more than 4 decades in litigation and family law. He's been a trial lawyer, a managing partner, author, leader, entrepreneur, and he says he just loves helping folks solve their problems, and I think we're going to solve some of them today. And he is now working with lawyers who are feeling stressed and overwhelmed in their practice and giving them really practical, tangible tools to overcome the obstacles and kind of get them freed up so that they can enjoy the success and the fulfillment that they've always wanted. And I'm excited to dive into that. We work with a lot of lawyers, and I know that it is an incredibly stressful profession. I thought engineering was tough, but it's nothing compared. So I'm excited to have him here. Gary Miles, welcome to the podcast.
Steve, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate that introduction. And I appreciate what you do to help other lawyers and other professionals really be seen as the authority in their fields.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I tell you, I think that hits, right where we were talking before we started recording, that so many professionals undervalue what they do. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that today, but I think it's important that they recognize what they do and that they bring real value. So tell us a little bit beyond the bio. You've been practicing law for a long time. I know you're sort of now working with lawyers to really help them elevate. How did you get to this stage of the career and life journey?
Sure. So I have been practicing for 45 years. I'm admitted to the bar in Maryland, where I lived for the first 67 years of my life. I now live in Pinehurst, North Carolina. I was a litigator. I did serious high-level personal injury cases for primarily 30 of those years. The last 15 of those years, I've done family law. I've been sober in recovery for a little bit over 30 years. I've worked a lot with the Maryland Lawyer Assistance Committee in Maryland to help lawyers, judges, and law students handle the challenges that they're facing due to the stresses of the profession. And now, as I'm sort of downsizing a bit from the active practice of law, I've started my own podcast like yours. Mine's called The Free Lawyer, and I've started mentoring lawyers one-on-one, and because I realize how stressful the legal profession is. And I've been kind of through everything, whether it's imposter syndrome, people pleasing, perfectionism, business development, ups and downs of litigation, winning some, losing some, focusing on losing and feeling fear. And I've learned how to handle all of those. And now it's not easy for me, but I kind of roll with it. I go with the flow. And I've seen that so many lawyers are just overwhelmed by hourly billing requirements, building their own book of business, competing with other lawyers. It's very, very stressful. And it's my passion today to help them be as happy and free and successful as they want to be.
I think that's fantastic. And, before we started recording, we talked a little bit about imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And I'd like to begin there. You've got a great resource around that topic on your website. And you admitted to me before we started recording that you felt that before. And certainly with your resume, I can't imagine that from the outside. But if you can feel it with the background you have, then just about anyone can. So tell me, why do you think it's so prevalent among really highly educated, highly skilled, highly knowledgeable professionals?
I can't honestly answer why. I don't know if studies have shown why, but apparently it afflicts those who are most talented and skilled, which of course makes no sense because they're the least ones who should, question their ability. I somewhat don't like the name imposter syndrome, although I use it because that's what people call this syndrome, because it suggests really that I, as a trial attorney, am an imposter, and I'm not, because I am who you see, and you value who I am and what I'm capable of. The purpose of the title is that inside of me, I think I'm an imposter. And I guess I prefer the words self-doubt, because I'm not really an imposter to the world, as that term would give, but more I doubt myself in the face of everything to the contrary. And, without getting into details, my academic background was stellar. I had the best work experience. I had a very successful career as a trial attorney. And of course, you try cases, you don't win every one, but yet my record was superlative. But yet I remember at 50, it's like, is this real? Am I who I purport to be? I still felt like I was wet behind the ears, and I've been doing it since age 23, and it doesn't really make any sense. But there are so many lawyers who doubt their abilities, despite everything to the contrary, proving that wrong.
Yeah, I tell you, that was a real eye-opener to me. We work with an awful lot of attorneys and help them write their book about their expertise. And one of the first obstacles that we've got to overcome most of the time with them is the idea that, am I expert enough to put my expertise into a book? It was a very kind of jarring thing when I first came across this. And we see it, of all the different professions we work with, we actually see it more with lawyers than in any other group. We see it in all the groups, but particularly with lawyers. And it's always struck me as being very unusual, because here you have some of the most highly trained and educated people on the planet, and they're feeling this and struggling with it. So how do you guide a lawyer through a process that kind of helps them get to the point where they're not in self-doubt, but they're in self-confidence?
Well, the first step is to really share their feelings with someone else, whether it's their spouse is fine, but their spouse is always going to say you're okay. But a professional acquaintance who they've been friends with a long time, or a mentor if they have one. I share my backstory with you about what I've accomplished, and yet having that, and you're like, well, Gary, that's ridiculous. Just sharing it with someone makes us realize kind of how silly it is if we give voice to it. I think the other thing is focus on the facts instead of the feelings. We doubt ourselves, but let's step back and look and see what we've done. How successful we were in law school, the nice firm we got a job with, how well we've done in our career, what our ratings are by whoever rates us, what our clients say of us. So focus on the facts instead of the feelings. And part of it is, I think it's connected to perfectionism, because so often we try to be the best and to be perfect. And we will always fail at being perfect. And so I encourage people to strive for excellence. Just be the best lawyer you can be. Don't strive to be the perfect lawyer. And sometimes we all make mistakes. The trouble I had was when I would try a case, I'd expect to win. I thought I was going to win. I thought I should win. I was wholly committed. And that level of confidence is okay until it becomes an expectation. Because what would happen then is I'd win, and I'm like, okay, well, I was supposed to win. I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan. If the Baltimore Ravens play a terrible football team where we're 15-point favorites, I expect to win. And when they win, it's like, well, of course you're going to win that game. But if you lose, you're crushed. So, getting rid of those expectations and accepting the fact that we make mistakes. And then be mindful of what our thoughts are. And, change our script. I have a podcast that I started about 15 months ago. And I have a lot of helpful information to share. The podcast done way beyond my wildest dreams, but I held up for 4 months in doing it. I knew how to do it. I knew what my content was going to be. I knew what I had to share, because I thought, who's going to listen to me? What do I have to share that's of any value? I went through that same self-doubt, with the podcast, so then get into action. Just change your script. Instead of thinking, I'm an older guy who's going to hear me, think I have 45 years of helpful experience to share. Change our script, reframe it into something more positive and more encouraging.
I think the key statement in all of that were, it's 3 little words that you shared there: get into action. It's so funny when you begin to create motion and movement, how a lot of the other worries go away. But it's sort of when we're sitting in inaction that we can sort of wallow in the worry about what we are or what we aren't. I think that's so smart. That's sort of the lever there. So as you're working with attorneys, I know that's something that has always sort of struck me as unusual, that they really struggle with, and certainly perfectionism, understandable that they deal with that. Beyond that, there's some practical challenges in the practice of law, at least the way that it's typically done, particularly around the billable hour. What are you seeing in terms of the struggle that attorneys have there? Are you seeing any trends in a different direction and different model? I'm curious what your thoughts are around that.
Yep, I absolutely am. I guess one trend is a lot of people go into what we call big law, which is the very sizable law firms where the rate of compensation is substantially higher than others, and where the billable hourly requirements are intense and mandated. And what those requirements cause a lot of problems. Of course, it can be a profitable way to run a business, but it causes conflict between the lawyer and the client. Because if you're my client, you want me to handle your matter as expeditiously, quickly, and inexpensively as possible. But the law firm goal is to bill a certain number of hours to take as much time. And then when you get the bill from me, you're shocked at the amount that's on there. And did you really need to take an hour to do that letter? Did you really have to call the other lawyer about that? Was that necessary? And we have this conflict that develops between the lawyer and the client, and sometimes between the lawyer and the law firm, because I don't want to be pressured to bill more hours. I want to be pressured to be efficient and to be of service. So the whole arrangement is fraught with conflicts. So many attorneys are starting to go to a new concept called value-based pricing, which is probably how almost every other business prices. I had a big landscaping job done. They didn't tell me it would cost a certain amount per hour until they were finished. They told me this is what it'll cost. They factored all that into it. They might have gotten some things wrong, and maybe they got, who knows what the real cost was, but they gave me a price and I did it. So value-based pricing is, Steve, how important is it for you to get this done? What role would you like us to play with you, for you? How long does it need to take? Are you willing to pay $10,000 for this service? This is what we see as the strategy. It doesn't include A, B, and C. They would be extra if they happen, but they may not happen. And you're like, okay, that's fine. And I'll say, can you give us 5 now and 5 in 60 days? You say, sure. And the best thing that happens for me is I finish it in 60 days and it's $4,000 worth of time. And the best thing that happens for you is it finishes in 60 days and that stress is over sooner. Now we're in synergy. We're working together to save time, to get it done efficiently. We're partners instead of in conflict. And a lot of folks have gone to that or something like it, which is just a fixed fee where we're no longer in conflict with each other. And it makes so much sense. But the traditional law firm model is not built on that. And there are a lot of objections raised, like, how do I know how much it will cost? How do I know how long it'll take? And we can't plan for all those contingencies, but if you've been practicing law for a long time, you should be able to figure that out.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I came from an engineering background. We went through the same challenge. There's a lot of hourly billing done there. And I had a client tell me one time that, he didn't want to pay by the hour, and he just expected that we would be able to figure out what it would take to do it and put together something that was fair. And if it was worth it to him, then we'd go for it. And if it wasn't, we wouldn't, which made total sense.
It does.
And, the interesting thing about that is when we flipped over to that sort of pricing model, we tripled our profitability in the very first year.
The folks who have done it have found they're happier, they're more fulfilled, and they're more profitable because they actually end up making more money, and clients are happier, so they refer more business to them. It's just a win-win-win all the way around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine you can get by with fewer clients, and that was our experience. Obviously a different profession, but I would imagine the same carries over for practice of law as well.
And the benefit of that model is it rewards efficiency. The faster I can get that work done, the more profitable I am and the more time I have for my family. Whereas the hourly requirement makes me just work a certain number of hours no matter what, no matter what. And it just causes a lot of stress for a lot of attorneys.
Yeah, well, it is the original pyramid scheme, I think. The only way in any profession that anyone figured out how to make money in that model was, well, as soon as I get good enough, I'm going to get 2 juniors under me. And now I'm elevating and working less than they're producing. And then they're going to get 2 juniors under each of them, and so on and so on. And there you go. And it works. It certainly works. But it's interesting to kind of watch that transition happen in law. So as you're coaching your clients through some of the challenges that they run into with the billable hour, because I would imagine some of the lawyers you're working with aren't in a position to dictate what the model is. They're working in the model. How do you help them navigate that situation where this is the model, I'm in the firm and I've got to deal with it, but I want to be successful in it and also be able to, to have a balanced or somewhat balanced life?
Well, the first thing I do is I always have my clients do kind of a procedure where we figure out their values and try to align their career with their values. How important is it to you to make a certain amount of money? How important is it to you to have prestige? How important is it to you to be with your family? How important is it to work 50 hours a week instead of 80 hours a week? And see if where they are is where they really, really want to be. And many times it is, and sometimes it's not. But the trouble is we come out of law school, we have a huge debt to pay back for school loans. We get that dream job. Everybody's going to say yes to it. And then we get a couple of years into it, we're not happy. We don't know why, because this was what we strove for our whole life. And now we have it. And it was our crowning glory and success, and we're unhappy. And part of it's because they haven't really figured out what is it they want to do? How much independence? How much autonomy? Who do you want to work with? How much say do you want to have in your business? And so sometimes folks decide, I'm not really in the right place. The second thing is to really help people be more efficient. When folks have so much to do, they can be very scattered in their approach. They're trying to do too many things at once. They're getting interrupted by calls from clients, and they see an email. I used to struggle with there's 2 screens. I'm working on your file, Steve, and then an email comes across from that obnoxious attorney. And I'm like the son of a gun. I'm going to put him in his place, and I'm off your matter, and I'm answering his email. And then I get back, and now where was I on Steve's case? And I had forgotten. So a lot of it is really working on their efficiency, because sometimes when we feel so overwhelmed, we feel unsuccessful every day because we go home, we say, what did I get done? So a lot of it is helping them to be more productive. And they really are, in a bigger firm, powerless over the kind of the arrangements. And so maybe that isn't where they want to be. I've talked to some lawyers who've left big law and gone to smaller firms, or smaller firms and started their own firm, or gone in-house, or started working for the government. And all those are different options depending on what our criteria are, what our values are.
Well, I think the key thing there is going through that thinking. What do I really want? I think that's probably the hardest thinking that we ever do. I joke with my kids all the time. We can get in the car and pull out of the driveway, and I can ask them, okay, where would you like to go to dinner? We go out to dinner as a family. Where would you like to go to dinner? And the only answer I ever get back is, I don't know. But the minute I suggest the name of a place, they're like, no, we don't want to go there. So they know what they don't want, but they never know what they want. I think that's really true in life. And how do you coach someone through that to sort of pull out what they really truly want through that difficult process?
I send all my clients prep work to do before we talk about it, right? Ask them to really, I identify the different values, different criteria of different jobs, and to kind of rate them or understand what's most important to them. So, I did very well in law school. I clerked in federal court. I could have gone into big law, but I went to a small firm. I don't know that my analysis was very extensive at that time, candidly, but in hindsight, it was the right place for me. Because for me, I prize independence and autonomy. I want to represent who I want to represent. I want to do it the way I want to do it. I think I do it well. I don't want to fit into a box where I have to represent people I don't want to represent. Like in family law, people say, do you prefer to represent the mom or the dad? It's like, I don't care. I don't even care the parties at fault and left the marriage. I just don't want to represent a jerk. And I can identify the jerks pretty quickly. They could be the person who didn't leave the marriage, the person who did, but I don't want to represent them. And so for me, I would have that power of choice over who I worked with, who I represented, what kind of work I did. For others, making maximum dollars is what's most important. That really is a high value for them. And they're willing to work harder, deal with some of the political structures in big law to have that. And that's fine too. One of the gifts of law, my wife is in the nursing field. She's a director of nursing. But one of the benefits of law like nursing is there's so many things you could do, so many different avenues. We just have to figure out which is the one for you.
Yeah, I think that's such a great approach. And really what you're talking about is finding what's true for you, but doing it without judgment. So all of those paths are great, but be clear about the path that you're on and be intentional about it is what I think I'm hearing you say.
Exactly. Be purposeful. Make a decision. And part of the trouble is so many people feel like they're stuck. Like, this is where I am. Boy, I chose this. I've invested 4 years here. I can't go somewhere else. We're never stuck. We have choices. We have power. Maybe we can't change the structure of that business or that firm, but we are empowered to do anything we want to do in law and to make choices for ourselves and be responsible for those choices.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk about the number one hot button issue for just about every attorney that I talk to, and that at least is in private practice, and that is business development. So You've done this successfully for over 4 decades. What's the secret?
Well, the things have changed there so much as well, too. When I started practicing, it was such a profession of respect and courtesy. Lawyers had each other's back. There were not so many lawyers. We got business by referral. Steve, you were happy with what I did to you, so you sent your friend Jack to us, and that worked just fine. But now we need to set ourselves apart. We need to brand ourselves. A lot of us think that name, some people think that name is misleading, and they're wrong. It's not. I have a brand, whether I create it or not. So why not portray myself as my best self, as who I really am, instead of letting other people do it for me? And so I think we really need to set ourselves apart, whether it's by writing a book, by having a podcast, by setting ourselves apart on LinkedIn, by blogs we post on our website, so we can show our expertise and who we are. I think the other key is networking in whatever way we see fit. We didn't used to have to do that. So whether it's joining a lawyer's committee, whether it's networking with other attorneys, whether it's so I used to do a lot of transportation work. I represented trucking companies and trucking insurance companies. So I was in 3 different professional groups that had conferences and education for those who defended truck drivers. As a family law attorney, a small firm, I look for who could be a referral source to me. So a financial planner could be. Other lawyers who did other kind of work but hated doing divorces, a great referral. I don't do criminal law, and you may be a criminal lawyer and you don't do family law. We aren't partners, but we can help each other out. I'll send you my family law case or my guy's charged with assaulting his wife to you, and you can send clients you may have to me who may want a divorce. So there are a lot of different techniques. I think the key in building our own brand of business is setting ourselves apart and doing what we're most comfortable in. If I'm a scholarly writer, write some articles for some bar journals or other professional associations. If I like speaking, speak at conferences. If I like one-on-one meetings, find groups where we can network, that way.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And you're absolutely right. Everybody has a brand, whether you are intentional about it or not. And it's hard these days. I think the single biggest challenge in front of all of the professions, and certainly law is, I think, on probably the leading edge, is commoditization. We've in many instances we've overeducated and we have too many professionals, and we're living in a time where expertise and knowledge is becoming much easier for anyone to access. And so it's very hard to differentiate and make the case for why people should invest in a professional. And then there are so many choices, it's very hard for them to understand which ones to choose. I share with our clients all the time that your biggest problem is overcoming the fact that the people who are trying to buy from you aren't qualified to determine if you're legitimate or not. They don't have the qualification to know if, in your instance, if you're a good attorney or if the guy down the street is a good attorney. They don't have the conception or the background to do that. And so it's very, very difficult for the consumer, which gives you an opportunity to really stand out, I think, and educate. Gary, this has been great. You've got some great resources on your website. I would love to get people connected there. Where, if you share the website, and then what's the best place for people to start who want to learn more about how you're helping and working with lawyers one-on-one?
Sure. Thank you very much. GaryMiles.net is my website. Folks can email me at gary@garymiles.net. If folks really want to know what I'm like beyond listening to this podcast, listen to mine, The Free Lawyer. Every Monday, I post a solo episode where I chat about something that is intended to be of service to lawyers. Everything from imposter syndrome, setting boundaries, handling our fears, to such things as business development, branding, and networking. And you can hear who I am and what I believe in. And if anyone would like to chat with me, you can set up a courtesy call either through LinkedIn under the name Gary Miles or through my website.
Awesome. Well, Gary, we'll link your website and the podcast and LinkedIn in the show notes. So folks, if you're listening to this on your podcast player, it'll be right there. You can click it in the show notes and you can get connected with Gary. Gary, thanks for sharing some of your wisdom with us, and congratulations on the new direction and working with lawyers and helping them grow and flourish.
Thank you, Steve. It's my passion and what I find fulfilling. And thanks for all you do to help us set ourselves apart.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Authority Builder podcast. Here are 3 ways you can expand your authority. Number 1, get a copy of the $1 Million Book. In it, I show you how to multiply your authority by writing a best-selling book in less than 90 days guaranteed. After all, you're the best spokesperson for your ideas. Go to authoritybuilderpodcast.com/book and get your copy. Number 2, join me for an upcoming Write Your $1 Million Book Accelerator, and let's jumpstart your authority building book now. For upcoming dates, go to authoritybuilderpodcast.com/accelerator. And number 3, work with me and my team to get your book done and bringing in business. Email me at steve@authoritybuilderpodcast.com and put "I want to write a book" in the subject line. See you soon.